How do we get through hard times? Hello, friend. There's a guarantee in life, and that you're either going through a hard time or a hard time's coming. See, hard times can propel our faith or knock us backwards. It's all on what we do in those moments. So today we're going to talk about how to go through hard seasons. First, I wanted to talk about buffalo and cows. They react differently in a storm. I'm not sure if you know that, but like a cow will kind of run away from the storm. It'll be scared by it. It'll move away from it. Buffaloes do something really weird. They run into the storm. And because of this, a buffalo actually reduces its amount of time in the storm, where a cow endures it longer and more miserably. So let's not be a cow, but be a buffalo instead. And so we're going to talk about 5 things in which we can buffalo up, I guess. Number 1, be honest with how you're doing. Be honest with how you're doing. At church on a Sunday morning, ask anyone how they're doing. Good, fine. I doubt it. See, we often answer back, we're doing good, or fine, or busy. Those are like the 3 main things. But how are you really doing? You're not fooling God. You're not fooling yourself. Like, just be honest with how you're doing. This is easier for some of us, like myself. Honestly, this is an easy thing. But I have people that I mentor that this is very hard for them to admit that they're not doing well. Like somehow this is a lack of faith. So if you find yourself in there, it's not a lack of faith if you're not doing well. It's not like something's dysfunctionally wrong with you if you're not doing well. It just is that you're not doing well. And in a hard season, like you probably aren't doing well. That's okay. Just admit it. You can't change something you're not honest about. I think that stops us in multiple areas. Just be honest. Number 2, have a community you can share that honesty with. See, if you're going through a hard season, you need people that you can actually be honest with. This takes a while to form because I think a big reason why we're not honest with others how we're doing is because they try to fix us, like get you to stop. Maybe good intentioned, but form a community that you can share with and they'll pray with you and sit with you in it. Not ones that will try to change you and fix you. I mean, it doesn't mean that we're not to change, but it's not up to someone else to change you. It's up to God to change you. And so form this community that will sit with you in the muck, sit with you in the mire. And these are formed in good times and bad. Don't wait till you're going through it to form this. Form it now. If you haven't started yet, it's okay. No shame. But please, start forming a community. And if you look around you and you're like, well, there's no community. There is. You have to form a community that maybe it's not one that you would prefer in the moment. But it's what God has given you. Form the community. Number 3, talk with God about it. Talk with God about it. Oftentimes when we're not doing good, we close ourselves off to everything, including God. And you see this in Scripture. Adam and Eve pull the dumbest move in human history that has not been beaten yet. Change our perfected garden. Man, we would be living in the Garden of Eden right now. But instead, they did the one. There wasn't like a plethora of things to not do. There was one thing to not do. Don't eat the fruit. What do? Eat the fruit. And the first thing you see Adam and Eve do is to hide. And God's like, where are you? He knew where they were. It reminded me of my kids when they were really little, like 2 years old, and they would be like, did you eat that chocolate? And they have chocolate all over their face. And they're like, no, right? Talk with God. If you're not doing well, talk with Him. If you're doing great, talk with Him. When you close yourself off from communing with God, you are setting yourself up to harden your heart. It does not end well. If you're going through a hard season, talk to God. If you're angry with him, talk to him. He can handle it. He already knows what you're thinking and feeling. He knew where Adam was. He knows where you are. Talk with him. Number 4, pause, stop, and reframe. This is hard to do, but it's necessary to do. See, I want to say, God, why are you doing this to me? And I want to live there sometimes. And it is so much more helpful when I'm going through a season that's unbearable, that I don't know how I'm going to get through. And instead, I flip it on its head and say, God, what are you doing in me? And I know that could be cliche, but it is profound when we can actually get there. God, how are you forming me? God, I believe you're going to use this. God, I believe you're shaping things that I do not understand. It shows humility when we pause and think of what God is doing in us, because we're going to get punched in the face by life. It's an unfortunate and fortunate reality. It's unfortunate because it hurts. It's fortunate because God forms things in our lives, in those heartaches that we don't want to ever walk through again, that changes us into being what he designed us to be. See, one of the biggest gifts in my life has been some of the sin I've walked in, some of the heartache I've walked in, some of my own failure I've walked in, is the very thing God uses. He uses in our lives to help others. He uses to form calling in our lives. The good things that have happened in my life, the vacations I go on, are awesome things. But he doesn't really use it in my life, in my calling. It's been the heartache. And I think if you look at your life, it's probably the same. There's like this unshakable hunger to help others in those areas. Number 5, physically move. As a Christian, sometimes we can just look to the spiritual, but God made us physical, mental, and spiritual beings. It's not to ignore our bodies. They aren't bad. And one of the great gifts of our physical form is that when we move our body, our mental and spiritual state sometimes changes. Physically move. And when you're going through a hard season, I know it's the last thing you want to do. Like, there's a reason why we stuff our faces with food and zone out, whether it's a TV show or a social media app. There's a reason we do that. We want to distract ourselves, whether it's with sugar or salt or with our visual senses. We want to distract ourselves. But by physically moving, it changes how we're doing. See, if you're going through a hard season, one of the things that you can struggle with is like, does God even notice? But my friend, God sees you, he notices you, and he cares about the details in your life. And if you need more faith in that fact, that he sees your details and he cares, watch this video right here. I know it'll really help you.